On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use. Welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. We are the official podcast of the Lot 1 Tailgate Party, which is at Lambeau Field every home game. This is episode 102, created February 5th, 2025. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me, Jeff in Minnesota, and Neil on the East Coast. And our guest, Scott, brings his Eagles fandom to the show. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hi, everyone. I am drinking a beer from the Elder Pine Brewery, and Kansas City is going for a third title in a row, so I'm having a triple IPA. But in sort of what I'm hoping for happen to the Kansas City Chiefs, I want them dying on the forest floor.
Okay. Well, good evening, gentlemen. Tonight, I'm having from Dragon's Milk a triple mash bourbon barrel aged stout. Now, this one is triple aged, so following that theme of triple. So, plus, this one's a little higher octane. This one clocks in at 18.7% tonight.
Daddy. John, I'll jump in. First of all, Neil, can I ask you about the Elder Pine? Because it's like 20 minutes from my house. I love that place.
This is my first beer, I think, that I've had from them, actually.
So, really, really nice job. 20 minutes from my house, right by Wardaka, around the corner. I love Wardaka, love Elder Pine. Had I known you were drinking Elder Pine, I would have brought an Elder Pine glass with my black coffee in my official Sierra Nevada miniature Yeti. Cheers, boys.
All right. John, well, I made a green drink for this episode, and it is just a frozen margarita. You can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat. And just the audio is available on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify by searching for Green Bay Chat. Well, this special episode is dedicated to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are in Super Bowl 59. And as mentioned, our friend Scott is a Philly fan, and he has joined us to talk about what's going on in the area for Philly fans and things like that. But Scott, kind of big picture of where we are right now. Philadelphia is making their third Super Bowl appearance in 8 years. And even with a coaching change, a quarterback change since 2017, what is this franchise doing right?
Everything except for, and there's one title in there. There is a stat, and I'm going to cheat because I made a note or two just to talk about Howie Roseman. That's what they're doing right. It's what he's been able to do right. And I punch up my bookmarks and all the crap that I save on the X platform, and you just take a look and you look at this. There's this really cool chart that I found from...
Nobody calls it X, Scott. It's still Twitter.
I know. All right, so Twitter. So since Howie Roseman reclaimed his spot as the Eagles GM in 2016, the Eagles have been to the playoffs 7 times, which is better than the Rams, who've made it 6, and better than the Packers, who've made it 6. In fact, those are the other 2 high water marks. You know, these are the NFC teams, obviously. I don't want to talk about the Chiefs or anybody else. The Eagles have made the playoffs 7 of those years. They made the NFC title game 3 of those years. They made 3 Super Bowls. They have won a Super Bowl. Whatever he does, however he crafts, however he says, oh, we want this guy. Oh, this guy might be available. He's a visionary.
Well, let's grab a couple specific ones. What were your thoughts? Let's go back 1 year. What are your thoughts when they signed Saquon Barkley or even Zach Bond?
John, I was through the moon when they signed Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And obviously now everybody's seen the famous video of what happened in the Giants front office and from Giants ownership on down, and how it was just an absolute bleep show, and how they, all right, fine. Oh, he's going to go where? Oh, no. Come on. How could you? I understand why they didn't keep him. I don't understand why nobody else wound up with him. That's, and again, there's reasons that he wound up in Philadelphia, but how are you not excited? I remember some of the negative Giants fans in my life saying, oh, this guy's washed. It's not going to work out. From going in, I was super excited. And as far as the linebacker goes, he was in what? He was in New Orleans, and you guys, know him well.
He's a Badger.
He's up in Wisconsin, exactly. So he's in New Orleans for a good couple of years and wrecks his, Achilles? I forget what the injury was. He winds up on IR and misses a chunk of last season, and he just signs a 1-year deal with Philly to prove himself. and has been arguably one of the best players on that defense.
He was a defensive player of the year finalist.
Yes. So these are just like, how does that happen? How does a guy coming off of an Achilles or whatever it was on a 1 year, a show me, rise to that occasion? Usually a 1 year on a show me is, all right, I'm going to help guys win a title, and they may very well do this on Sunday. We'll get to the prediction part. But how does that happen? Usually guys on a 1 year show me coming off of an injury, they're there to prove it to themselves. I can still play in this league, and I'm going to get a next deal. Not I'm going to go to the freaking Super Bowl and be part of a tremendous defensive performance.
How much do you think Vic Fangio plays into that?
A lot. But you got two guys here, and as my friend Al Galdi always used to call him, Spagnuolo, Steve Spagnuolo, his defense always comes to play. And I'm a little scared about Sunday about what Saquon can and cannot do, just because Spagnuolo is legit, and they are legit. Kansas City, despite their gaudy record, despite the national hate, despite all the referee accusations, their defense is so freaking good, and they always can when no one wants them to. And I'm not a hater, but how do you not respect that side? Mahomes gets calls. Oh, okay. I forget which national pundit said this recently. The reason that we're all enthralled with this referee angle, real quick aside, and I know it's off the menu, is that they're on TV so damn much. We have the largest sample size of Chiefs games, boys.
Everybody sees it. Yeah.
Yes. What were pick your favorite cereal as a kid. You're like, yeah, all right, it's my favorite cereal, but there's always like the gross piece at the bottom. Eat another fucking cereal and you won't find the gross piece at the bottom. Like, stop. My Fruity Pebbles. I always got like a cocoa mixed in. Stop eating it. There'll be no cocoa pebbles.
That's bonus material.
Yes. We see them, they're.
All right, Scott.
Breathe, Neil. Breathe.
Talking about coaching staff now.
Right?
He'll be fine. Just get him a drink.
Yeah, seriously. Have some more Elder Pine, my friend.
So we know Fangio is making a big difference there in Philadelphia, but what's the consensus among Eagles fans on how this team is better than 2 years ago? And what does that do for Nick Sirianni? I mean, you guys were ready to run him out of town, weren't you?
Just to play catch up, I checked in with my lifelong friend, Eric, a guy I grew up next to when we were little and always lived next to one another. And then when I moved to D.C., we obviously went our separate ways. I always like to check in with him, sort of with the view from the old neighborhood. And just to paraphrase, he says, look, I don't know if I would say Sirianni is loved after last year. I think they were ready to actually bounce him. And this is just Eric, but a fan. It's a love-hate relationship right now, and the Eagles fans are on such a high because look where they are yet again, but it's kind of a wait and see. Let's see what he does and how he does this year, because just was 1 year ago they were bounced by the Buccaneers in that heinous playoff mess, but they were flawed. I mean, they got better. What you asked what also excited me. What excited me was what they needed. They needed youth and better in the secondary, and they got that with Mitchell, and they got that with Cooper. So those were things I needed to see. I needed to see Carter come into his own, and he did. And I know I miss Fletcher Cox, but everybody else is towing and just they're a different, deeper unit. And I just got tired of watching people's tight ends abuse them or just dumb, lazy coverage in the secondary. And the young kids are really bringing it. So, but back to the head coach, I think it's a lukewarm love, and that's probably just like a jumbo shrimp kind of thing. It may not make any sense. It's like, okay, we love him because he's gotten us this far. But remember what city we're talking about, boys. It can just as easily turn from, high. The next click on high on your old electric stove is off. Just remember that.
So the proverbial short leash.
By the way, Jeff, I don't even understand what that means. Just talking. Yeah.
So the short leash, right? Like you said, as long as he's performing, as long as they're winning, then hey, it's all good. But if things go south, perhaps a little bit, that it's going to turn quick.
I think that Laurie and Roseman, obviously. Okay, let's do this here. The fans are reactive, to say the least, just like they are in Green Bay, just like they are in anybody's market. The fans don't
Fans do.
hire. Right. The fans do what fans do. The fans are not hiring and firing people. They'll let you know that people should go. But for the most part, I think that Laurie and Roseman are of right and like and correct mind when it comes to stuff like this. Am I in love with Sirianni? No, not really. But the fact is, he's now been to the crest of the mountain a couple times in the last several. That's hard to do in this league. Really hard to do.
Let's go back to previous Super Bowls. So you've been an Eagles fan, obviously, for a long time. Super Bowl 15, 1980. This had to be a fairly central feature in your becoming an Eagles fan or in your growth as an Eagles fan. Talk to us about that 1980 Super Bowl.
So, before then, I would go to the vet with my dad, and my dad, God bless him, still with us. He got tickets from friends or what have you. I remember going to see them get slaughtered. I can't tell you who the opponent was, but I remember the seats were so great that they were in like the third base box, because remember the Phils and the Eagles shared the vet, and we were not in plastic seats. We were in like a metal frame box. My dad and I brought a huge plastic tarp, and we threw it over each other, and we brought with us the 10-inch Sony, 12-inch Sony from the kitchen that not only had a plug, but it had size for D batteries to put inside. So we brought a couple sleeves of D batteries, and my dad brought like bungee cord, and we wrapped it on the rail. And I went to a bunch of games at the vet, and the Eagles weren't very good. They had good players. Bill Berge, who recently just left this earth a couple of weeks ago, great linebacker, played with the Bengals, played with the Eagles. He was one of my heroes of my youth. But, moving on a little bit more from that, they had players like Carl Hairston, they had Claude Humphrey. The 80 Super Bowl was such a big bummer for me because they hosted Dallas for the NFC title game, and they go to the Super Bowl. And on that particular day, Jaws, Ron Jaworski, who, again, loved him as an analyst and just the nicest, most affable football ambassador, just a really good dude and a really good radio interview. He had a shitty day, and he threw the ball to Rod Martin repeatedly, and that really bothered me. And Kenny King, who I frankly never heard of after that day, also had a nice day in that Super Bowl. And the Eagles, I believe, lost 27-10. I don't remember the final
correct.
score. Okay. It was a bummer. But what was good about that time period was that the Eagles made the Super Bowl and lost to the Raiders. The Flyers made the Stanley Cup Finals when I was a Flyers fan, and they lost to the New York Islanders, sadly. The Phillies won the World Series to beat the Kansas City Royals, and the Sixers made the finals against the Lakers. That's so cool when you're 12 to have all four of your teams in sort of a Tiger Slam calendar span of a year. All of them went to the finals. That just doesn't happen. Like when you're 12, you're like, oh my God. It was amazing. Did they win every title? No, but they got there. That breeds such goodwill between you and your sports teams. But yes, I remember that well. I still have like the Blues and the North Stars and the Wings pennant you guys see behind me, or don't see, but it's fine. It's color TV. I'll adjust it with rabbit ears. I still have a pennant from the Eagles. It's a legit 1980 pennant from the Eagles winning the NFC title. It was very memorable at the time and incredibly disappointing, but I loved him. I loved Harold Carmichael, loved Wilbert Montgomery, loved all the guys from that era. So it was great. Dick Vermeil was their head coach, and a wonderful man and a wonderful head coach. It was a bummer. I expected them to win that game. It was sad, but it definitely reinforced, galvanized. I don't know. I'm out of the thesaurus pages, but it certainly added to the fandom, gentlemen.
So going back to your fandom, 12 years old, when we were 12 years old, the Packers, stunk mostly. But one of the things that we did hang our hat on were all of the great Packers teams of the past. Growing up, we were taught everything about the Lombardi era Packers and the history before that. Did Eagles fans have that same connection to their prior championship teams from 1948, 1949, and 1960?
It's funny, maybe, and again, I know this about my Packer friends because Lambeau is such an historic venue. The Vet was not historic. Like the Eagles played at other venues, whether it was Franklin Field or here, there, wherever, dating back. I would have to revisit this topic with my dad, but I remember asking him, did you like them then as much as I like them now? And while he could tell me about Sonny Jurgensen as an Eagle, and he could tell me a lot about Chuck Bednarik and what an amazing player he was, Tommy McDonald, and some names that my dad would remember. But for the most part, Philly was such, at that time, a basketball city, be it high school, college, or the pros with, like Wilt Chamberlain and sort of his effect with the Philadelphia Warriors. Yes, the Eagles have always been popular. Yes, there were NFL successes. But my dad, while growing up an Eagles fan, it's nothing like it is in Green Bay. I want to re-ask him that ahead of the game. And I will. And next time we do this, because it's an interesting chapter that's like one of those books you go, Dad, oh my God, you were in the Allman Brothers? You just open up, like, I have no idea. But no, I want to ask my dad about that, just to sort of revisit. He told me about players, but he never told me much about, oh yeah, you have no idea. I mean, and also, by the way, I'd be remiss. My dad's of a certain age, so he knew the Philadelphia Phillies were his team. The Flyers didn't come to existence until the '67 expansion. So that was still relatively new, but ran deep in basketball, certainly deep with the football team, but even deeper with the baseball team. So we'll do another podcast about what Scott talked to his father about.
You have a homework assignment. Yeah.
You got some homework, Scott.
That's actually an interesting thing, though, because Packers fans could tell you a lot about that 1960 Packers-Eagles championship game.
Sure.
Is the only championship game that Vince Lombardi
Packers lost. That Vince lost, yes. And I want to from a book. Like, it's not because my dad went, "Oh, you hop aboard my knee, son." He never brought it up. I'm like, Dad, they won a title. Yeah, I know. I'm like, all right. And he's like, and then he would talk to me about the '64 Phillies, who they were up 6 with 7 to play, and they blew it. It was like the collapse, and Jim Bunning was on that team. My dad would rather talk about that. Maybe it's the Philadelphia complex of inferiority and negativity, and yeah, we've always sucked, or we come from a long line of disappointment. Don't worry about it.
One additional historical question related to that. So the Eagles date back to 1933, but there was an NFL team in Philadelphia before that, the Frankford Yellow Jackets, who actually won an NFL title. Why don't the Eagles connect their history to the Frankford Yellow Jackets history?
It's a really good question. 10 years after that, they had the Steagles. You guys ever hear about this? So it was like during wartime, 43 or 44, there weren't enough players because a lot of our boys were fighting in World War II. So they just combined the franchises, and they had the Steagles, the Steelers, and the Eagles, and that's really cute. I don't know. I mean, I grew up not all that far from Frankfurt Avenue. So, again, let me ask Lenny. That's my dad's name. See what Lenny remembers about, your grandfather and I. No, my grandfather wouldn't have taken him. My grandfather spoke like 2 words of English, and I think one was Siga and the other one was Rhett. So,
One final historical question here. What Philadelphia professional sports team has won the most championships?
Do you have this?
The answer is the Philadelphia Athletics, who won 5 titles in Major League Baseball. And I guess this answers my question. Are Eagles fans excited about potentially catching the Philadelphia A's for the most titles among a professional sports franchise?
Again, a better question. I would think that because those were so long ago, Neil, I don't think that there's going to be some sort of shared banner podium ceremony with the mayor, who, God bless her, she may need to spell Eagles and A's when it comes to this.
Yes.
So I don't want to,
fire a vowel.
Yeah.
Yes, EL.
Back to your fandom growing up. We talked about 1980. 1980 is the proverbial Doc Graham coming so close, right? And you're 12 years old. Like you said, it's like, holy cow, all these teams are doing great. But it's a 24-year wait after that before Philadelphia gets back to the Super Bowl. Now you get into adulthood. Do you understand better that, I don't want to use the term futility, but the difficulty it is to have championship teams? What happens in 2004 as far as being an Eagles fan?
We're down that was Jacksonville against the Patriots, and Randall Cunningham's throwing up, and T.O.'s playing on a broken leg, and I'm down there the week of, and we're having fun on Radio Row, and we'll talk about stuff like that in a little bit. But, John, it's a great question. Yes, there's definitely an appreciation. Yes, all of the bullshit that my teen self and any teen fan self is spewing, they suck, I'm not going to be their fan anymore. You lose that because you do appreciate that McNabb's throwing up, and T.O. had the high ankle fracture or whatever it was, and he comes back and puts on a hell of a show. You appreciate definitely much, much more. And, it also added a lot more salt in the wound because it took so long to get back there. And now I'm X years old, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are they going to beat this team? These are the New England Patriots. You're not supposed to beat this team. What was the final?
It was 24-21.
24-21. Thank you. It was a close game, a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. And yes, I came away with a much greater appreciation for what it takes to get back. And I wanted more. Well, fast forward, they finally get theirs. And I loved it, and I'll forever cherish it. And I remember where I was and all this other stuff. But the neatest part about it was I was working with then former Washington Redskins who were honestly happy for me because finally, and there was a Giant fan that worked there. There was a Dallas fan that worked there. Most of them were Washington fans. But finally, we had the monopoly in the division. Everybody had a title. They're like, how's it feel? I'm like, it feels great that finally that the neighborhood has something for everybody to put out on their porch. And now, you guys can't give me shit anymore about not experiencing a football title. And so it was neat. It was neat. And I you're not supposed to, especially, and I know how you guys are in the division, nobody roots for Minnesota. Nobody roots for, God forbid somebody roots for Chicago. Nobody's going to root for Detroit. It felt good. And it was good for the neighborhood that everybody had one.
Scott, going back to Super Bowl 52, you remember your halftime show?
Prince.
Oh, no. Paul McCartney.
Oh, Paul McCartney. That would have been my favorite. Yes.
At least you had a great halftime show for 52, right?
As the years have gone on, I've actually come to appreciate them a little more. I would get out the whole list. If you start firing them at me, I'll just go, oh, I love that. Or nah, I got up and I ate during this one. That's what they've become through the years.
Again, back to that 2014, the Super Bowl 52. Let's talk about Andy Reid. What's Andy Reid's legacy in Philadelphia, and how are Philadelphia fans looking at what he's doing in Kansas City? He doesn't win in Philadelphia, but boy, he's got things going in Kansas City.
It is the ultimate either middle finger or apropos, because the Eagles fans, and by the way, to this day, I'm a huge Andy Reid fan. You can't not be. And again, respect. The vibe was, all right, well, they're going to have to part ways and whatever. What really happened, I'm sure one day somebody's going to write a book about it or something like that. But he's the one that keeps getting in the way of titles, and he keeps on winning them. So someone in Philadelphia at some point is going to have to say, we should have kept him. He's a great coach. What's denying this? That I think next playoffs, he's going to pass Belichick as the all-time leader in NFL playoff wins. He just keeps piling them up. His legacy is he was full of disappointments when they just couldn't stand to be disappointed anymore. And now, how many disappointments does he have on his finger? And he had really good players and really good teams.
Does he leave Philadelphia at the right time? Like, does he have the same last 20 years if he stays in Philly?
I think he had to leave Philadelphia because, there's phrases that I like to use that no one else has used, but, like coaching yogurt. At some point, be it a great flavor, it's still going to turn in your fridge. And so the message gets old. No one's going to pull back the foil and eat it. Oh, it's my favorite. It's root beer and sprinkles. What the fuck I just said. Anyway, people are like, oh, I just love this flavor of yogurt. Yeah, but it's turned. All right, we got to throw it out. Yeah, but it's great, and you love this. I know, but it's done. It's over. Like the relationship was finished. And so whatever happened. For him, did he leave at the right time? Fuck yeah. He goes over there and he keeps on winning titles. Having Patrick Mahomes doesn't hurt. Having all these great coaches doesn't hurt. Having Kelsey, having Chris Jones, yes, and also stable ownership, and ownership that believes in you. I mean, the Hunts are football royalty and legacy upon legacy. So again, referee stuff aside, whatever you see on social media, it's a good organization. It is, unless I'm missing something. For his sake, yes, he left at the right time. For the Eagles' sake, I wish he would have stayed, but I understood why it was over.
I think when he left, and so he goes to Kansas City, and I think he seemed to mature, because we always used to joke like he would forget about the running game, so it would just be passing, and inevitably there would be a loss. Whereas he's matured, or success has sort of begat success with him as well. The guy we had on last week, Charles, we asked him too, like, what is this about? Like, how, and it's like when Kansas City steps on the field, you just sort of expect them to win, and they expect to win.
No, it's a great point, Jeff. I think that also it's a combination of so many things. I mean, whether it was a Tyreek Hill, Mahomes has been the constant through such a great many of these things, but say what you will about Bieniemy, that's Reid, but Reid's also an extension of that West Coast, which had lots and lots of success, as you guys well knew, up there in Green Bay. So he comes from a really, really good tree. Is there such a thing as coaching maturity? I'll buy that. I think there is. I mean, Sirianni from a couple of years ago, where you're like, dude, don't be too smart for the room here. Just be smart enough to win the game. And decisions were made, and Reid would forget about the running game, and then all of a sudden, nope, it's still there, and timeouts and clock management. So many of these guys go through stuff like that. I don't want to say they hear it from us, the chattering class, or they hear it from sports media, but yeah, you have to learn. You have to pick up from all of your mistakes, be they in-game or be they post-game or be they little tiny tweaks where, you know what? We went for it there, and yeah, probably still should have gone for it, but that was the wrong play. Or, damn it, I wish I had that one extra timeout. I swore that challenge was blah, blah, blah. Throughout the years, I remember the running statistic was how great Reid was coming off of a bye and how great his teams were coming off of a bye. Why is that? Like extra sleep? They were magical. Take a look, and I often wondered what that was based on. A lot of guys got really healthy after the bye week. Well, the bye week floats like, they're 17-2. I have no idea, by the way. I gave up tabulating that. But that was always like a plus Reid stat that they were great coming off of a bye. But I do like the maturity aspect of it. And I do like the fact that he lets his coach, and he believes in his guys. You can also tell that. There are guys that you look in their eyes on the sideline when they're talking to their quarterback, or they're talking to their defensive captain, or they're talking to their playmakers, and they're either angry out of discomfort, or they're angry out of disbelief, or they're angry out of just being insecure. Reid hasn't looked insecure in a decade. Like, that's, maturity, coaching insecurity. Nobody's firing Andy Reid. Once you get to, and it just seemed like even before the titles, he just looks like a guy who was, yep, I got it. Okay, good. And so let's just go coach and let them play and, be simple about it. He's not cocky. I mean, you think about the other guys who sort of attained that level, be it college or pro. And what did you guys see when you saw a Belichick? Or what did you guys see when you saw a Bill Walsh or a Saban? Or pick your poison, or go rewatch tapes of old Vince. And a different era, different type of guy, but just when they talked to people, the message was there. There was no miscommunication.
It was clear. It was to the point. Yeah.
But the other thing that I see with Reid that you don't see with all coaches as they age is that there's not this appearance of complacency. It's like he's constantly innovating. He's constantly trying to push himself to be even better. And that is not the normal situation. I think that is a special characteristic of Andy Reid.
Neil, I agree. We watch their games because, again, They're on TV so much. They were on this year. They were on because of Christmas. They were on every day of the week except for Tuesday or whatever it was. We mock. We get tired of the push passes or the quarterback or the tight end taking a wildcat and doing whatever he does, or this, and it's a pitch and it's this position. There's endless creativity, and I think that there's again, a level of security, a level of comfort, a level of coaching maturity, a level of mutual belief and mutual understanding. Like, shit, if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out. Like, they always figure it out. And that goes back to something I said earlier, not that I like quoting myself because you shouldn't want to do that. When all of us are sitting there giving the Maloika to the TV screen, they do what you don't want them to do, and that is succeed most of the time.
Talk about the things that your team does historically. And we talked about 1980 and again through 2004. With the entire Philadelphia Eagles franchise, is there a signature playoff game? Something in the Philadelphia history, a la the ice ball for us, that whether it's Super Bowl 52 or something else, what's that game? What is the story, to paraphrase Bob Costas, makes you feel these nipples when you talk about it?
I'll go back to 80. And again, I'm sure, you ask a bunch of Philly fans this question, you're probably going to get a bunch of different answers. Take the Super Bowl win out of it, Philly special, rah, 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 and Nick Foles and all that stuff. And, neat. I'll go back to that 80 title game against the Dallas Cowboys. I think the final score was 20-7. I remember watching it in the basement with my dad for Philly in January. I remember it being a very windy day. Again, I was all of 12, so we had our Siberian Husky, Kasha, who was going out back, and we had an above-ground pool, because that's what you did inside the mean streets of Northeast Philly, and it had a big water bladder that we put in with the chemicals so it would slow bleed during, so you didn't take the cover off and unlock the cover in May and find green water like your drink there, John. So, I remember watching the game in the basement. I remember it being bitterly, like 15 with lots and lots and lots of wind. And I know Wilbert had a really big day, and I just remember being so happy. And they could run the football with Montgomery, and they could play defense. And to shut Dallas down and hold them to 7 points in an NFC title game, and God rest his soul, that bastard Tom Landry, just to see them walk away losers. That was a Rocky style, beat them up, be really, really physical. That's the playoff game for me that sticks in my mind. The Fog Bowl, with Randall against the Bears. There've been other games through the years. For me, they just start to blur because, and again, I was in market for that. But then you get to the later years. I remember seeing them lose. The Bucs game is for shit. The one from 2 years ago, and they lost on that Monday night. Horribly disappointing, but incredibly predictable. You're like, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going to roast these sons of bitches, and they did. And I was angry, and you could see it coming. They skidded, and then they just bottomed out throughout the back half of the season. There was disappointment there, but childhood memories are the best memories, gentlemen. Let's leave it at that. 1980 NFC Championship game, ding.
Childhood memories, and let's talk about that now. Where you are, you're going to the Super Bowl this week, right? Has that gravity set in? Have you talked to your childhood friends? You mentioned you want to talk to your dad about this. What's kind of going on with you there? Where are you guys coming together on this? Where are you going to be on Sunday?
Physically, where I'm going to be in a neighborhood party every year this Lund family hosts. And whoops, sorry about that. Glad this isn't 3D. Yes, it's set in. It'll set in more on Saturday when I'm done my work week and I can finally grasp it. We watched, I mentioned before we started recording, I was in Barcelona visiting our son. The whole family went over and we saw him for about a week. I watched the NFC title game in a bar called Coco Vale. It's a bar with TVs, and I sat next to an Eagles fan from Toronto via Philly, I forget where else, and he just happened to be there on business. He's watching the game sitting next to me. We're high-fiving. There was a guy in a Santana Moss Redskins jersey. He's an expat who moved over there. There were a lot of burgundy and gold, but there was Wentz and Michael Vick and A.J. Brown, and I don't think anybody went way, way back with their Eagles jerseys, but there was a Jason Kelsey and there was a Saquon, but it was setting in then, John. So it was really, really cool to watch them destroy Washington, where I live now. So it certainly made it more meaningful. I was happy for my friends in DC all year. It's good when the neighborhood is good. You get tired of just they were so downtrodden and forlorn, and the ownership was just an absolute shit show. Now it's great. Coaching's really good. General Manager Peters is wonderful. Jaden Daniels is great. I'm happy for my friends. I'm also very happy that they lost the NFC title game. Let's not, paint this any other way. And I'm glad that we're in New Orleans. So it set in then. And then I was with my kid for about 6-7 days. And our daughter and our other son and my wife and I were putt-putting around Spain, which is a very, very lucky experience to share that with them. So the whole football thing got put on hold. Then we flew back to the States and we're like, shoot, Super Bowl's coming up. Yeah. So beyond excited, it'll get more. It'll get more. As far as connecting with my brethren from yesteryear, yeah, you guys know this. You come back from a trip. I went to work. I flew back Monday night. I went back to work on Tuesday. Tuesday, I get out of work, and I went to a grocery store. Before I got out of the car, I texted one of my childhood buddies. I'm like, so? And he just texts back, and he goes, I hate to say this, Kansas City's going to win. I'm like, and it's just a Philly sort of
that self-loathing fandom, right?
Oh, wow.
So, Scott, what about the rest of your family? Your wife and kids, are they Eagles fans as well?
No, absolutely not. I have one child who is a New York Giants fan, which is bizarre because nobody's from New York. I have another child who's a Patriots fan, which is bizarre because I'm from Philly and my wife is a native Washingtonian, and our daughter actually does root for the local team. She's a Commanders fan. And my wife, my wife grew up with burgundy and gold tickets and with an aunt and an uncle who have since passed, but that, so no, nobody roots for the Eagles. They're happy that dad's team's in the Super Bowl, but my son, the Giants fan, is so angry that Saquon is experiencing success. He sat with me. I mean, we're sitting at the bar drinking cerveza in Barcelona, and he just turns to me, he goes, "It's really making me sick." Really. And he's like getting visibly, you could see his stomach was about to spell help me like Reagan in The Exorcist. He was that sort of pained by the situation. But at the end, he's like, go Birds. And he gave me a big hug, and he was fine with it. So nobody's rooting for their dad. I mean, you guys have seen the memes all over social media about how people are so infuriated by this. It's the team that America hates most against one of the cities and organizations that America hates most. I'm like, okay, then don't watch. It's still the Super Bowl.
Neil, I hope that this is at least giving you some, I don't know, maybe a small light that not all Eagles fans are terrible people. Are you getting some good
John, as I have noted before, I live in the Philly metro area. I've got plenty of good friends who are Eagles fans, and it's just all of the ones that go to the game, but we'll ignore that part. In the end, I think that I'm still not even sure who I'm cheering for in this game, because part of me says, well, I'm anti-Eagles more than anyone else, even than the Vikings, I think. And I like Andy Reid, but by the same token, I kind of like the Packers having 3 titles in a row by themselves. But if anyone's going to do it, I would prefer that the Chiefs do it over any other team. So I am exceedingly ambivalent in a weird way, because I'm never really ambivalent about anything.
And yet here you are in your red white jersey as well.
There you go. I mean, I think that is one component that I think I am leaning Philadelphia for the reasons I stated.
So one of the things we don't really talk about is really your media background. I know you mentioned it a moment ago, but you are or were at one time kind of a big time radio guy. I mean, come on, you were on a nationally syndicated show. You've been to or close to the top of the mountain. With that, you got to go to a Super Bowl. You got to do Media Week. You've been there. What's that like? Give us the behind the scenes. What are we missing this week?
Oh, it's first of all, I was a big time tire of my shoes. That's what I was. I was big time nothing. I had a lot of fun, and I was very, very lucky to do what I did for a super long time with a bunch of really nice people, guys that I'm still very friendly with today. It was an awesome ride. But yeah, we attended many Super Bowl Radio Row weeks. As I got older, and it was the tickets or the media pass, the credential for the game, if we even had it. Occasionally it was offered to me, but rarely. Going in, I'm like, Super Bowl is an event you should watch at home. And depending on if you have a rooting interest or, God forbid, a gambling interest or what have you, watch it in your basement by yourself with like a very small crowd. We're going to a Super Bowl party this weekend, and I love the people that we're going with, and I love the fact that they have the game on in several rooms so that you can find a more quiet space to enjoy the game. But Radio Row, boys, is like nothing else. It's really fun and really cool because you get to see all the people that you read about, either from other markets or from national exposure. And oh my gosh, there's so-and-so from ESPN Radio, or there's book, you walk through the convention center, there's the Dan Patrick Show, and there's Dan Patrick's set. And when Francesa was still doing it, and there's Sirius XM and our old friend Bruce Murray on NFL Radio, one of the first guys I met when I got into sports radio in the early 1990s, as good of a dude as the day is long. And then there's the really funny stuff. So there's all this sort of, radio camaraderie, if you will. Then there's the really funny stuff when they have the sponsors walk around. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm with Subway. Here, would you like to talk to Neil for a couple of minutes? Oh my gosh, Neil, I'm a huge fan. And then they put Neil on your set, and he puts his headphones on, and he turns to you, and you've already introduced yourself, Neil, Scott, Neil. Okay, here's what you're going to interview Neil about. Yes, I want to ask him about the game and the team. Well, you got to ask him about $5 footlongs for about 4 minutes, and then you get one question about the game. And so you ask Neil about everything that they've handed you on the sheet. Tell me about the fresh toppings. Tell me about the deli meat. Tell me about the freshly baked bread. Tell me about the cheese. Tell me about the soft drinks. And then you go, hey, Neil, real quick. And they go, hey, we got to go. And then they scoop Neil up, and you go, I wanted to ask him about the game.
I know you changed the names to protect the innocent, but you did interview Jared from Subway, did you not?
This I don't remember. I know we interviewed during Radio Row Week. It may have been like Drew Brees or somebody, but the connection, this was back on the Zabe show, but I think it was Drew Brees. Again, boys, memory's cloudy. He was on the shittiest speakerphone in the world. We asked him like a question and a half, and they took him. We're like, well, that sucked. Zabe became enraged, just sort of with the whole process. Ironically, he's in New Orleans.
He's there this week. Yeah, I was going to
set. Yes, he texted Steve Solomon, Solly, and I a picture of a set, and I'm happy for him because he is getting to bump into and rub elbows with a lot of our former teammates and former coworkers. But that's sort of like, you do have to play the game, though, too. Leading up to it, gentlemen, you get emails for a month. Hey, Scott, it's Tim Blank with so-and-so PR agency. I'll be down in New Orleans, and I might have Gronk to talk to or Tom Brady. But also, I have Scott Linn selling socks. Can you do me a solid and talk to Scott about the socks? And then I'll see. It's like
carrying the stick.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta pass the crappy part in order to eat the really good part. So, you do have to play the game. But again, I understand that it's their job to get coverage. And if you do want to be a mensch about it, do them a solid and do the interview. It's not, no, I will talk to no one about nothing. Then you're not going to get anybody, basically. But, I mean, way back in the day, John, and I will protect the innocent, there were characters, just people. I'm not even talking about what used to be like Monday night before it became what it is now. I'm talking about actual radio people in costume or just screaming because they want attention so everyone in the convention center hall will look at them. You're like, I'm sorry, what are you? Oh, I'm the football expert. And you're like, are you? And they're dressed up like who was the dude with the Matthew Lesko with the question suit? And you're like, what do you do? Well, I ask questions about football. And you're like, no, that's Mr. Lesko's shtick. What are you doing? Anyway, all sorts of characters through the years. But Radio Row is a lot of fun. We used to call it the Fuller Brush Convention for radio people. But it was a blast. That is one thing I mocked, but I miss it.
Yeah. And your friend Zabe, who is now in the Green Bay media market, his radio station, they cover the Packers. They're down there. And I did get to hear him this week talk to LeVar Arrington. Now, you know as well as I do, that's a great interview.
So I worked with LeVar locally here on a couple of shows. Obviously, Penn State legend, number 56. Took Troy Aikman out, and I don't mean for lunch. I'm going to ask Zabe about that because LeVar, in one of the later iterations of Fox Sports Radio, was part of one of the morning shows that several years down the line. Zabe, I wonder if Zabe said, by the way, you're sleeping in my old bed that we had back in, X year. I'm interested, but LeVar is always nice to me. Good dude. I'm interested to hear how that went off the air.
I'm going to make you throw a name out there. I'll throw one out there from my brief radio interview days. Players that are just shitty interviews. 1993, I was at Media Day for the Packers, and Mark Clayton had just come to Green Bay from Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible interview. Anybody that you can think of during those media weeks that just left you flat, kind of like the don't meet your heroes because you'll be disappointed situation?
I was lucky in that everybody that we got to talk to, I mean, Zabe and I love it still. There are two really good memories, John, that I come away with. I mentioned, I think it was Breeze who was like there for a question and a half and gone. Fine, whatever. And I don't hold it against him. It's the PR people. It's the marketing people who they grab the big showtime at the Apollo cane and they just pulled them. They're like, well, he's got another obligation. You had him from 10:23 to 10:24 and a half. We're really sorry. We're like, fuck, come on. This isn't my fault that you showed up late. Well, he's very busy. Got to go. Two of the really good ones, and Zabe and I love to reminisce about this. Brady Quinn sat down and talked to us about dogs. And Zabe grew to be a dog guy. I've always been a dog guy. I loved talking to Brady Quinn about dogs. Forget football. We had a really good time. Another time, Jim Kelly was there representing KFC. And he signed, they were giving out like $5, they looked like gift checks long before the gift cards, but they were gift certificates in a check form. And I have somewhere in my house a Jim Kelly signed $5 KFC check. He was just the most gracious. And, you talk about just a hard road with variety of loss and disease and battle and just beloved and and well deserving of such respect aside from the on-field stuff. I really liked those guys, and there were crappy ones through the years, and I'm probably selectively.
You're not gonna throw a name out there? Okay.
Yeah, no, some of of course, but
it's okay. I know that about Scott. Scott would never say a disparaging word. He's always the middle guy on the arguments. He always sees both sides of the equation. And I respect that about you, Scott, that you're not gonna say a bad word about someone.
But Scott, I have a question. Would you deceive somebody if you found that Jim Kelly $5 gift card? Would you encourage somebody to hobby irresponsibly, since you like to hobby responsibly?
No, I'd keep that, man. I love it. The fact that I was like, Jim, can you sign this? And he's like, sure. And he looked at me like I was weird. I go, this is a memory for me that I'm talking to Jim Kelly. Like, that was also the really cool part. John, you asked earlier, don't try to meet your heroes. Don't ask to meet your heroes. I got to rub elbows. I think it was during a radio row with Julius Erving for a couple of seconds. And I was in awe because the classiest of the classy and the everything that Julius Erving stood for, and just the flow and the smooth and the just
presence,
ambassador and the presence. Yes, Jeff, thank you. I was like, oh my God, you're Julius Erving. It was amazing. So for the most part, I always I'm like, holy shit, I'm talking to Julius Erving. Holy shit, I'm talking to Brady Quinn about dogs and dog food and adopting dogs. Like, these are regular conversations. Like, oh, screw the big game. You got a prediction? Yeah, I think I think Dallas is going to win. All right, great. Move along. Let's talk about dogs. That's when you get to, at least for 3 or 5 minutes, really sort of, they come pre-programmed with the football stuff. That's also what I recall mostly. That's stuff they do in their sleep. It's almost better to ask them, or just to sort of get them sidetracked and talk about something they love. And Brady Quinn at the time was like, yeah, I'm a huge dog guy. Great. Let's talk about dogs.
Scott, I'm going to ask you about something that I know you love. You love music. Going back to the game against the Kansas City Chiefs this Sunday, the Chiefs obviously have a big musical icon that is behind them in Taylor Swift. What is the Eagles' musical antidote to Taylor Swift?
It's a great question. When the Phillies were doing what they were doing over the past couple of years, they had what's the Dancing on My Own, and everybody fell in love with that. I don't know what their current song is, but I'll go back to 80 yet again, and you guys can look this up. Do you remember McFadden and Whitehead? Ain't No Stoppin' Us Now.
Okay.
They were Philly guys. And by the way, if you want to read like tragedy, I think one or both of them have passed. One of them was like some sort of alleyway crime or something. But I just remember that song at the time being very prominent and prevalent on Philadelphia airwaves. Like, the Eagles are going to do this. Ain't no stopping us now. And it was sort of as the disco era went from the 70s into the 80s, it had a nice vibe. And those guys were involved in either producing or writing other songs and sort of that sound of Philadelphia. They were like an offshoot of it or part of it. Again, I don't want to, I want to make sure we give credit where it's due. But I remember that. I remember Grover Washington Jr. certainly ties to Philadelphia, like back during the Winelight. But I don't know what the current type of Eagle mantra is, not being there and just being outside of D.C. I'm sure there's some sort of rah-rah. But that's the other thing, too. Gone are the days of the Super Bowl shuffle. Guys are so inside of their own headphones and their own walk-up music that it's become more of a personal thing. I love what the Vikings defense did, because it was a show of dancing unity, and whether they were doing the thing from White Chicks, or they were doing the thing from High School Musical, or they were doing that was cute, and it was fun, and it showed that they gave a shit enough to practice it, although they nailed it. I have no idea how many times they practiced that stuff. That was fun. But I don't, back to your question, this has turned into like a 20-minute answer. I'm sorry. It's like a fucking Fish concert. I don't know what the current anthem is for the organization, as it were, gents.
TSOP, the sound of Philadelphia, is a little outdated, isn't it? Yeah.
So am I, John.
It is not Top of the Pops anymore.
I'm outdated.
Sure. Yeah, you're not. You're still, okay, maybe, yeah, you are.
Yeah, maybe you are.
Silly easy, boy. John. Easy.
Yeah, I know. We're not far behind you, Scott. But you're still around. That's good, Scott. Where can people find your current content, your current podcast? What are you doing these days? No,
thank you for doing that. I, as you guys say, hashtag hobby responsibly, collect responsibly. I do regular work for Migray, which is in North Jersey, and they're nice enough to put it out on Spotify and a variety of places. You can watch it, you can listen to it. It is very hobby focused, but if you are into game-worn NHL sweaters, and they do a lot. They do great stuff with the NBA. They have partner teams in the NHL, and this is like a Migray commercial, but love those guys. Been dealing with them as a collector for 20-some-odd years, almost 30 years or whatever it is now. I love talking sweaters, and so we do one pretty much every other week. Sometimes we do 2 a week, just as, different things come in, and it's more for their clients. But if I can get If people come to it and say, oh, you're doing this, that's actually really good, and I listened to it a couple of times, I'm just trying to be me and ask questions and learn. I always want people to listen to that pod and say, oh, really? They repair these things. Or they, Alex Ovechkin wears X number of jerseys, but his teammates wear them from October 1st for set one until about the middle of December until, and that's a lot of wear on a home and a road sweater, and they're out there getting marked up and stitched up, and so it's fun. Anyway, Migray Tales from the Warehouse is available on Spotify and wherever they post them, which is great. I do a podcast four times a week with my friend Steve Solomon. That's through Patreon. Lynn Murray Solly. We're on Zabe's podcast once a week. Zabe.com, the Zabecast. Zabe's on our podcast. And these days, I'm actually not doing sports broadcasting. I work for 105.9 WMAL News Talk, and I'm like a news anchor, and I love the
Nice.
people with whom I work, and they're all very nice, and they teach me things every single day, and
Yep.
I write reports and voice them, and then on the weekends I'm the weekend anchor, and I fill in whenever they tell me to fill in. But the really, really, really cool part is, gents, after working an awesome time and variety of schedules in the sports radio world, Tuesday through Friday, I go to work at 9:30 and I come home at 5:30. And that makes me openly weep that I can have dinner with my family and be able to
Nice.
watch games.
Awesome.
And, you know,
Yeah.
it's as much as I loved my time in, and I'm still a very big sports fan. I mean, I come home and I turn on the Caps, right? Turn on the Wizards. All right, no, I don't really turn on the Wizards, but I come home and I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But I turn on sports, but I don't have to wake up in the morning and then fill 3 or 4 or 5 hours on that. God bless those who do. I'm envious, and you know, I'm happy for the folks, that my friends who are still doing it, but it's definitely different now, and I like this different. It's cool. It suits me.
You now have Chris Middleton in the
I
the
saw
Wizards
that.
lineup.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kuzma. You know, I mean, that's interesting. I think I might be healthier at this point than Chris Middleton, but I'm not sure.
It's a toss-up. So with your Tales from the Warehouse, are you just hockey sweaters, or do you have someone who might be able to track down a Frankford Yellow Jackets jersey for you?
Seriously, you never know. I mean, I get DMs and emails and just sort of reaction. That'd be kind of cool. We get questions saying, "Oh, I'm a longtime collector of, you know, would you guys like to have me on?" And my great, I'm a what do you want to call it? Moderator. I'm a you know, I'm somebody to help the podcast. So I'm the host and I'm the interviewer, but it's their topic, it's their warehouse. I'm just there to produce it and to host it. But you never know what topics come up. I mean, we talk about wear a lot. We talk about teams. We talk about vintage. We talk about photo matching. But John, there've been some crazy ones that, you know, that come up, and man, I'd love to. I'm assuming that there's a Yellow Jackets jersey or piece or something in Canton. I would hope that it's been
Yeah.
memorialized somewhere.
We'll put that out into the universe and see if you can rope it in another show.
Please.
And maybe we'll come on your show and we'll talk dogs next time as well.
You guys, you know, anytime, you know, you're more than welcome. We could talk Elder Pine and Other Half and the Milk Dragon and you know, and Surly and whatever else.
There you go.
Jeff, what is it you're drinking? The like it's an 18% triple barrel aged stout. or
Triple mash, Dragon's Milk, triple mash.
the Dragon's
And
Milk.
he's still upright.
No, that's a sipper right there, brother.
Yeah.
I remember grabbing like a 4-pack, I think, of Dragon's Milk. It was one of the first, like, outside the market barrel aged somethings that my friends highly recommended. I haven't had it in forever, but yeah, it was dynamite, man.
Yeah. It's and you mentioned Surly too. That's one of my favorites, is the Surly Barrel Aged Darkness. Every year that comes out in March, and give me some of that.
I'm here for it. Trust me. You know, I mean, we're for the Super Bowl party on Sunday. A couple of friends of mine are. I have too many stouts that I need to drink here that have just basically been aging and just sort of mellowing. But I'm also tempted because I saw that Firestone Walker put out like their latest anniversary this week, and I just want to grab one and just share it, you know. And
Partake.
It's a 12. It's not an 18, but it's a 12. So, you know, as I tell my friends, if two of us split it, it's only 6%.
There you go.
Fuzzy math.
All right, Scott, we're going to put you on the spot. We need your final thought here. We need your prediction for Super Bowl 59. What is it?
Boys, I want to be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I just don't know. We saw really good things against Washington. Washington's defense was a known inadequacy as far as they were concerned. I just don't think Saquon's going to be able to do that. And just because we saw Hurts do better, guy was out of work for a month and then came back and showed a lot of rust. He was, I think, 7 for his first 7 against the Rams in that playoff win. And everybody's, oh my gosh, does this guy look rusty to you? And then the rest of the way, it was white knuckle time. And it was very, very frightening. Against Washington, a lot easier. Having Saquon will help. I just think Kansas City's, God, I hate that I'm predicting them to win. I want to be wrong. Please, fade Scott. Kansas City 35, Philadelphia 31.
All right, Neil, Jeff, any changes in your prediction plan for Sunday?
No, what I want to see is a well-played game. I want to see a competitive game and not where, there's going to be a ref situation or it's going to really hinge on one game, on one play. I think if Philly is going to win, it is going to be, I'm still going to go with Kansas City, but if Saquon does Saquon things from this year, I think the Phillies are going to go not as Hurts. I think they're going to go as Saquon goes. And if he has a solid, really good game, couple touchdowns, because I'm rooting for Saquon. I mean, he seems like the nicest guy. He's handled the whole adversity, leaving the Giants. Not a bad word that I've heard has ever been said about this guy. I mean, he just seems like a really classy guy. Whether it's win one for Saquon or whatever, it's going to be up to him how Philly does. So I think Kansas City will do Kansas City things, and they will probably figure out a way to win. They'll get their three-peat. The team will blow up probably, or, coaches will go away, players will go away, and the dynasty will probably be over. But if Philly can really come on and have Saquon do Saquon things, they've got a chance.
I am staying with my prediction that Kansas City is going to win, but I think for Philadelphia to win, it's going to be dependent on their stars. So when you look at the statistics for Kansas City, it was remarkable that they don't have a 1,000-yard receiver. They don't even have an 800-yard receiver. Philadelphia has those things. And if they can get those huge plays out of Devontae Smith, out of Brown, out of Goddard, out of Saquon, they've got greater overall star power outside of the quarterback position, and they've got guys on the defense who also have that star power potential. If you see extraordinary from the Eagles, I think that their extraordinary can overcome what Kansas City is going to do. That's not the smart betting money, but I think that's where their hope is. And I don't want to say I'm cheering for the Eagles, but I'm cheering to see Kansas City lose, and that's the way I'm looking forward to it happening.
Ooh.
And
Are you okay? Are you okay, Neil?
I was thinking high-scoring game, but Scott, kind of earlier when you talked about Fangio and Spagnuolo, you got me thinking, gee, maybe this won't be a high-scoring game. And I was thinking that it could be like what Kansas City Buffalo had, or even a lot of scoring like in your game with the Commanders. And maybe I'm sticking with it. I like 31-28 as a final score, but maybe toss it up on who's going to be the winner there. I think, like Jeff said, if Saquon Barkley carries this team, Philadelphia can win that game by 3, but Kansas City could as well. Remember, the last 3 Super Bowls, all 3-point wins as well.
I also like what Jeff said. The Eagles high, their ceiling is high. If both offenses are to play to their full potential, then I do, despite Mahomes is obviously the far better quarterback. I'm not the biggest Hurts guy either. But if both offenses play to their fullest of potential, yeah, I think Philadelphia is overall has the opportunity to show way more. But when's the last time that happened? And don't say against Washington, because that could be just sort of a 1 week off. Like, take a look at what happened second half most of the season. Not everything clicked at once, and Kansas City's defense will do that to you as well. They're a lot better than Washington's defense. That's why I'm a little frightened, boys. I want to be wrong.
Scott, thank you very much for being on the program. It was wonderful having you as a guest, and for you coming back to the GBC podcast. We truly appreciate you being here with us.
Pleasure's mine, boys. Be well.
All right. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit subscribe, leave a comment, find the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat. That's all one word. We are on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Blue Sky, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. On Facebook, it's the GBC podcast Green Bay Chat. And you can follow us on any and all of those social media platforms. We'll tag Scott in when we get the episode up and running as well. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Good night.